Gods are supposed to be immortal, more than immortal, divine, somehow separate from, distinct from, above the rest of physical reality. According to their stories, they are the creators of all that we experience. They are the living, incarnate symbols of the principles which govern the cosmos. They are the all in the one, and the one in the all. And you people are hell-bent on murdering them. It's a thing I see in so much of your fiction. From the very texts these figures come from, to the video games your children are playing, you just seem to have this fascination with duking it out with your deities, which is interesting because you're also the ones who create them to begin with. I'm going to try not to get too philosophical in this video. For now, just consider me an explorer. I am fascinated by this weird, blasphemous thing you humans do, and I just want to understand all the ways in which you do it. So, let's take a look at how, according to your fiction, one kills a god. Got a really great idea for a story, but don't quite know how to put it all together? Well, there's a 12-part class you can take for free that I think will really help. It certainly helped me. Creating Unique and Powerful Worlds, taught by many-time author and professor of fiction, Lincoln Michel. Check the description to see how you can get access to it and finally get your story project going without spending a dime. A big thanks to Skillshare for sponsoring this video and giving us the opportunity to tell you about it. This class has been a special one for me, and I feel really lucky to get to share it with you this way. Definitely be sure to check it out. Okay, so, of course, the first and most obvious approach is to just stab the thing, right? Like you would anyone you're trying to kill. But the categorical hiccup is that gods, importantly, are not easy to kill. Sure, gods can kill other gods. They do it all the time in their respective stories. Gods are even known to kill themselves, looking at you, Odin. But when it comes time for a human to do it, your frail mortal hands just aren't equipped for the task. Until, of course, they are. In the original 2002 game God of War, the protagonist Kratos spends much of the story trying to get his hands on the fabled Pandora's box, which, according to the game, will give him the power to kill the god who ruined his life, Ares. In the card game Magic the Gathering, there's an expansion called Journey into Nyx, where the hero Elspeth is gifted a special god-killing spear called Godsend, which she uses to kill the chaotic and dangerous upstart god of revels, Xenagos. In the game Elden Ring, long before the player ever shows up, all the power to kill the world's immortal demigods is locked away in a single greatsword owned by its ever-faithful guardian, Malekith the Blackblade. There are endless examples of this, and especially in video games where players love to find the keys to progression and power, bridging the gap between the mundane and the divine with a simple weapon or tool makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you solve your problems with violence, what a MacGuffin to get your hands on, right? Something that will literally let you solve cosmic problems by swinging your sword? Kind of dreamy to have a solution so simple right at your fingertips. And then, just think of all the delicious ways a power like that could backfire. What happens when you put the power to undo the supernatural forces that govern reality into mortal hands? Will they wield it well? I don't technically have a gut, but if I did, it would be saying, probably not. Fortunately, I also don't think it's the only way to bridge this gap. Whether you consider Jesus Christ a legitimate deity or not, the crucifixion story is probably the most well-known and resonant example of a god choosing to die at mortal hands. I mean, it's literally a story about God sending a piece of himself to earth as a sacrificial lamb, supposedly for the sake of mankind. And, surprisingly, this isn't actually something I see very often. I can imagine a lot of interesting scenarios where a deity might condescend to let mortals end their existence, without any kind of powerful MacGuffin to enable them to do so. Maybe as an act of benevolence, giving power back to the mortals in some capacity. Maybe just to end the monotony or the weight of divinity. Maybe out of hubris, thinking they don't need their godly powers to best a mere mortal. a lot of interesting directions to take this, but it's also a very literal interpretation of what it means to kill a god. All of this has been, it doesn't always have to happen with bloodshed. In the case of gods as symbols or manifestations, sometimes it literally can't. Instead, you humans tend to use another very powerful tool for this, one you've always had access to and which you aim at a lot of life's problems: humor. There's this incredible phenomenon that a lot of people experience when they first play the game The Elder Scrolls III: Morrowind. The game has an expansive story with some of the richest, deepest world building I've ever seen. Over the course of your adventures, you learn a lot about the lore, including a huge amount about the game's big bad, Degathur. They do a lot to prepare you to face this guy. He's the one who dethroned the gods of Morrowind, who spread pestilence and disease across the land, who became a god himself. Here's his actual line of dialogue when you finally come face to face with him.
What a fool you are. I'm a god. How can you kill a god? What a grand and intoxicating innocence. How could you be so naive? There is no escape. No recall or intervention can work in this place. Come, lay down your weapons. It is not too late for my mercy.
All that, and then, out like a light. If you've never played it before, Morrowind is a rare game in that it gives you an absurd amount of freedom. By the time most players reach this fight, whether through sheer leveling and experience or by abusing one of the game's gazillion exploits, they've basically become gods unto themselves, which makes this last fight bafflingly anticlimactic. It's kind of hilarious, an absurd sort of comic drop when this god, who is by all reasonable expectations the thing you should fear most in the entire game, just sort of falls over at your touch. That example is still a pretty literal way to kill God, but the bigger thing here is what the comedic angle does to your perception of the god. Reducing it to a punchline really sort of undermines its grandiosity, doesn't it? It's hard to instill awe and fear and devotion when people are laughing at you. For any god whose existence is built on belief and deference, it's as good as a death sentence. Ultimately, the place you see this the most is probably real life. Blasphemy, gallows humor, that kind of thing. It's no wonder that the type of fiction this tends to show up in is of a more irreverent nature. I wouldn't go out of my way to watch any of these, and I'm not sure I can recommend that any of you do, but there are a few pretty clear examples of this out there. In one episode of the fairly vile mock children's show Wonder Chosen, God gets so angry at losing a game of rock, paper, scissors that he kills himself, after which the show's puppet host, being very hungry, eats his body. In the musical comedy Starship, it is an empirically proven fact in-universe that God was killed a long time ago. So, unfailingly, whenever a character invokes his name, they attach the prefix dead to it. Thank dead God, they often say. In the show The Boondocks, yes, probably the last show you ever expected me to reference on Foundry, the character Riley goes on a brief tirade about how, if he were ever to meet God, he would...
First of all, I'ma live forever. But if I do die, I'll go smack God upside the head and go tell him to give me a grilled cheese sandwich and some tacos. And I dare God to say something. I'll be like, say something, God, say something. Yeah, I thought so. And if God say something, I'll be like this. Ooh, take that, God. I'll be feeding God's jaw like, blah, blah.
As crass as most of those examples are, I think they speak to something very real, that if you can just reach high enough to stick a clown nose on your god's face, it very rapidly ceases to look like a god. Perhaps one of the most effective and natural of all ways for mortals to do battle with the divine. But there is, perhaps, one thing more lethal to a deity than any god-breaking weapon or blasphemous punchline could ever be: neglect. Here's a joke for you. A Frenchman, an Englishman, and a German come across a bear in the woods. The Frenchman says, "Mon Dieu." The Englishman says, "Oh my God." The German doesn't say anything at first. When they both look at him, wondering where his exclamation is, he looks back at them and says, "God is dead." Seems a little stark, but if you know anything about the German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, you get it. It is, after all, perhaps his most famous quote. "God is dead," he wrote. God remains dead, and we have killed him. By we, of course, he means humanity. To Nietzsche, the very idea of a god had become fundamentally unbelievable to many who purported to worship one. Times and ethics had changed too much, and soon, he thought, the institutions founded on this hollow belief would eventually have to founder and collapse as well. We are, of course, not here to suggest that this is how things are, rather that this is an interesting way of thinking about the divine. It suggests a reciprocal relationship, one where the faith of the believer informs the existence of the god, and not the other way around. Think about all the ancient mythological deities that have, through cultural shifts over long periods of time, basically been reduced to fiction. Think about all the deities whose names and rituals have been all but completely lost. Just like a lost language, in a manner of speaking, you could call these abandoned deities dead, couldn't you? And that implies something profound, that a simple lack of faith could spell the end for the divine. This is a concept that shows up a lot in fiction, like loads. It is all over the place. It might even be one of the most common dynamics where deities appear in fantasy. In the video game Salt and Sanctuary, gods literally feed on the power of prayers. This becomes a problem for them when the nameless god traps them in a crypt, intercepting and answering all of their prayers while they slowly starve to death. In the book Small Gods by Terry Pratchett, despite a flourishing religious following, a formerly powerful god stands on the brink of oblivion. Turns out, people just believe in his church these days, not him. But thanks to the faith of one single faithful adherent, he's able to just hang on in the incarnate form of a lowly tortoise. In the book American Gods by Neil Gaiman, immigrants bring versions of their own deities along with them to America. But this new land with its strange ways does not have much to offer them in the way of prayers, and the starvation begins to show. Anansi, the African spider god of mischief and cunning, is reduced to a little old man in yellow gloves. Chernobog, an ancient Slavic deity of darkness and calamity, becomes a chain-smoking cow butcher. Odin, the Norse principal deity, the All-Father, becomes little more than a con man. It doesn't have to happen at sword point, doesn't have to be the result of a brash, killing joke. It can be done quietly, accidentally even. According to your fiction, and in a way, actual history, the way humans most often tend to kill deities is by forgetting about them. I know I said at the video's start that I would try not to get too philosophical, and considering the subject matter, I think I did a pretty good job. I'm not here to tell you whether this is a good or a bad thing in your fiction, not here to tell you how to feel about it, just here to explore. That said, I do want to acknowledge the gravity of this. It's easy for me, a machine without a known origin, without many or any connections to the natural world, to shrug my shoulders at the idea of the divine. But for you humans, it can be a very different story. Your relationship with these things is complex, and in a lot of cases, very beautiful. Even Nietzsche thought so. You hear God is dead all the time, but in the same text, he immediately went on to ask, how shall we comfort ourselves, the murderers of all murderers? What was holiest and mightiest of all that the world has yet owned has bled to death under our knives? Who will wipe the blood off us? What water is there for us to clean ourselves? What festivals of atonement, what sacred games shall we invent? Is not the greatness of this deed too great for us? Must we ourselves not become gods simply to appear worthy of it? Be prepared. There is a weight that comes with this action. You do not get to kill your gods without also collapsing the version of the universe they held up. Whether you do it in a work of fiction or you do it in your own life, know that the god-killing sword always has a second edge. Take caution that you do not end yourself in the process. One big part of this topic is cosmology in general. If you're developing a fictional world with gods for your characters to battle with, you're going to need to figure out, the universe that they occupy, what exactly it means for them to be divine in your setting. You're going to have to do some world building, and it can be really hard to figure out how to start that process. Fortunately, a while back, I found something that will absolutely help you. It's a 12-part video series called Creating Unique and Powerful Worlds, taught by many-time author and professor of fiction, Lincoln Michel. He walks you through how to begin your new world, what the ripple effects of that starting idea will be like across your world, how to create themes within your world, how to create characters to experience the world you've made, and then, finally, how to put all of these things together. The prospect of creating an entire world can be really paralyzing, but it doesn't have to be. This course will absolutely help you bring the size of the task down to something you can really understand and manage. I can say from experience that it is so liberating just to have a roadmap for a project like this. And thanks to our sponsor Skillshare, you can actually watch it for free. I personally would sign up for this course alone, but you'll also get access to thousands of other classes as well. Experts from pretty much every discipline have gathered there to share their knowledge and experience. There are classes on creative writing, illustration, fine art, animation, graphic design, film and video, pretty much anything you can imagine. You can even join in on live classes, connecting with other creatives and teachers while you learn. After talking with them about it, it seems like the people over at Skillshare can see why we're so excited about this world-building class, so they've decided to give you the opportunity to experience it and any other Skillshare class that catches your interest for free. This month, the first 1,000 Tale Foundry fans who join the Skillshare community will get not just the usual 15-day trial for free, but a full 30-day trial. An entire month of free learning and expert guidance on all the creative things you've ever wanted to do. Click the link in the description or the link right at the end of this video to get started. And I would definitely hurry because those slots are going to fill up fast. Once you've finished this class, Creating Unique and Powerful Worlds, please come back and tell us the impact it's had on you as a writer. I cannot wait to hear the success stories. Anyway, that's all for this one. Thanks for watching and keep making stuff up. I'll see you next week. Bye!